My name is Adrian Padron. I'm the paid media director at Mason Interactive, and I'm joined today with Katie Klencheski from our partner agency at SMAKK. Katie, if you want to say hi.
Hi guys, I am Katie. I'm the founder and creative director at SMAKK Studios. We are a branding and creative agency that focuses on working with consumer brands, primarily brands that are working across sustainability and social impact.
Great. So today's webinar is going to be a little different than what you see traditionally. And the good news is for you, no boring slides, just a conversation between me and Katie. We want to keep this light. We're talking maybe 20, 25 minutes, casual conversation between us about the upcoming and exciting Q4 holiday season. That said, we do have a few things scattered throughout this conversation to be more engaging for you, the viewer and listener, such as a couple of polls, as well as some Q&A at the end. So do feel free, if you have questions while we go, to drop them into the chat. I'm not sure what side of the screen it is for you, but for me, it's on this side. Drop it in the chat. We'll address the questions later. And again, we want to keep this as conversational as possible for you. So bear with us while we wait a little bit longer for some more attendees to pop in. We'll probably get started around the 1:05 mark. So just a couple more minutes or so. Great. You know what? Actually, just thinking about it, I think we should probably just get started anyway.
Yeah.
Right? People will pop in. So what are we here to talk about today? Holiday planning. How many of you have thought about holiday planning? I hope more than zero. It's coming around the corner. Summer ends very soon. We're getting into the fall season. We need to get holiday schedules into and holiday plans into play and into action. Katie's company name is SMAKK, S-M-A-K-K, I believe.
Yep.
So what we want to talk about to you today is a few things we've noticed with regard to just current 2020 data trends, how consumers are interacting with brands. This conversation is more so tailored to your e-commerce brands of the world. It could, in one way, skew towards maybe CPG, but I'm a big fan of no knowledge is bad knowledge. So if you're from, say, an EDU or anywhere else, maybe an automotive brand, it'll be still interesting for you to kind of take some nuggets of information out of this. So 2020 trends, some consumer expectations and what we plan to see in the holiday, what we need to think about in terms of getting our house in order, and then the biggest topic here, planning and what needs to be done in order to get that going. So to start us off, we just want to have a quick poll. This poll is around holiday planning, not to put anyone on the spot, but we are curious to know of how many attendees, how many have started their planning sessions for holiday. This poll should be opened up. I believe it's opened up. Should be starting in a minute, just published it. So feel free to drop your answers in there. We have no, I normally plan just a few weeks before because I'd like to be stressed out. We have no, but I want to start soon. Yes, but the plan still needs a lot of work. That's a totally fine answer. And yes, the plan is pretty much ready to go. If you're in the last bucket there, kudos to you. I'm not even sure really why you came to this webinar today, but maybe you should be involved with the Q&A at the end of this. Seems like the majority that we're getting here is yes, but the plan still needs work. So I would love to see in the chat for later on what those things are you're trying to work through if we don't address them during this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll here. The results were 70% of all people in attendance today have somewhat of a plan, but know that it still needs some work. There's another small bucket that want to start soon, but they have not got that going just yet. 2020 trends. I think everyone can admit that this year's been pretty wild. Katie, I'm sure you'd agree that it's been a little bit of a roller coaster here and there, right?
Absolutely. I think, I was thinking, Adrian, how many of these planning for holidays for e-commerce have you been through in your career?
I mean, I've been doing this a little over 10 years, so probably more than I'd want to admit. But they seem to start earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah, I was thinking that this is, every year before this has been some conversation about whether this is the year that e-commerce is going to tip into the thing that everybody's doing instead of shopping in store. Or, it was, at first it was, are people going to do holiday shopping online? Then it was how much, then it was how much of it's on mobile versus desktop. And I feel like this is the year that those questions have been completely obliterated because COVID proved that literally everybody shops online now. Whether or not they did this time last year, the question of whether some people are doing some amount of their shopping on e-com, it's absolutely happening. And people are shopping for more things now online than they ever thought they would.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw in the March, April timeframe that Shopify was seeing higher levels of traffic to all of their shops and all of their domains, comparable to Black Friday, but every day, which is insane. A lot of that was driven by browsing behavior, but people were not going to stores. People were going home, staying home. Mobile device was skyrocketing more than it ever was. And that product browsing and brand introduction behavior shifted completely online. I know we at Mason picked up a couple of few new partners that had brick and mortar stores that immediately had to pivot to straight going online and doing e-commerce.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest trends that we saw in the middle of COVID is brands that really had never thought about e-commerce before were suddenly realizing that, oh my God, we really have to pivot, at least part, and in some cases, all of our business plan to be completely driven by e-commerce. And massive change there. Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing digital marketing for a long time. I don't know anything about what it means to run a retail store. So I could totally understand how someone that's so into retail would just kind of forget. Maybe I don't really need a website right now, but I'm sure that those same people are now realizing, wow, there's a lot of opportunity online. I don't have to rely on foot traffic constantly, which is pretty cool. Everyone needs some different perspective every now and then. So I'm happy to see that that's really happening today. And you're right. I think this Q4 will be one of the biggest, if not the biggest Q4 online that we've ever seen.
Yeah. And we saw a lot of brands that, like food brands that, grocery was their most important channel, suddenly saying our own .com is a place that we're suddenly seeing traffic and they never really paid attention to that before. Or brands that, had a business model that just was more about brick and mortar or took place in a location that now is just completely inaccessible to people. And so now moving those experiences online into an e-commerce experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know for us, something that we really had to work through a lot was projections and just market analysis. Another trend we saw happen was the improvement in the cost per 1,000 impressions. The CPMs in March declined dramatically. They almost followed the stock market slightly. And really that played an opportunity for brands to stay in market that were able to afford it and get more introductions to new customers at a cheaper cost. I don't expect it to happen this Q4. I think the CPMs will rise higher than they ever have been because of the level of competition. But some of the pivots we made within our targeting were around different interest themes that are more relevant to the times we were in today, as well as pushing promotions because the market demanded it. But I'm curious, from a creative lens, outside of targeting and execution, how did you pivot your resources and your time for creative?
Well, creative got really tricky at the beginning because a lot of what we do is developing campaigns. So purely from a logistical standpoint, anything that was a planned photo shoot, or video shoot fell apart right away because just safety concerns. So we saw a lot of budgets for content production, shifting into working with either solo content creators, like small photo teams that would be scrappier and able to help us and be more agile too, because we saw the kind of needs that we had for promotions were changing and the things that obviously all the spring calendars and, we literally had a campaign that we were doing this spring for a brand that was called Spring Fever. So that didn't come out. That was inappropriate.
Right.
And we really saw the need to be more agile. And, one of the things that we've been leaning into quite a bit is working more with influencers and kind of using content that we can create with influencers and seeding product and developing campaigns around that because it's something that we know is more reliable in terms of content creation and also kind of a stickier experience across social. We're seeing using Instagram stories and brands having more direct conversations with their audiences in ways now that we really didn't do the same time last year, where,
Right.
a highly polished campaign. Now there's a lot more of us kind of, engaging with consumers and a lot of times engaging with consumers on topics that are really kind of separate from the products themselves or the brands themselves. A couple of years ago, you wouldn't expect your lipstick brand to have an opinion about police brutality necessarily. But
Right.
now you see brands that, and want to, and in fact have to engage in conversations around, social impact and social justice because consumers really want to interact with brands that mirror their values.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more because we experienced some of the same types of conversations. We had partners left and right asking us, what should we do? Should we take a stand? Should we take a position? The guidance that we gave was always, if you're going to take a stance, make sure you stick with it, right? It's not a one and done. That authenticity and honesty matters a lot. And I think that the UGC and influencer style content kind of helps to carry that true even further, right? Putting more of a humanized touch to the content rather than such a polished campaign, which is nice. And it actually, I think, plays well to some of the stuff our friends at Facebook and Instagram would say from years ago, which is you don't have to have such beautiful creative, just shoot something on an iPhone. And now people are being forced to do that and probably seeing that the results are somewhat similar.
Have you guys been able to track the differences in performance between kind of the more polished campaigns that might read as a little less authentic versus the campaigns that are running that talk to social impact or talk to purpose?
It's tough to put a pin on that and to have a strong opinion on what's working best because it's a lot of market influence that's actually driving the engagements. Everyone's driving such heavy promotions right now that if we looked year over year against a polished campaign versus what's running today, we almost can't even compare it. At this point, I think what we're trying to look at is within our small pocket of testing, what is working better against that little subset of testing. And we are seeing that when you add value back to the customer's life, when you empower them more to feel good about what they're doing, it makes a big difference. The more of a position and stance you take, whether it be for social responsibility or just an overall brand value, people respond to that. And especially the upcoming generation that has a lot of future purchasing power, your Gen Zs and your younger millennials, even though I'm technically a millennial. Because, there are some statistics being thrown around there that say around 30% of customers are more likely to actually purchase a product from you if they learn about your brand values and connect to them.
Yeah, and I think we also saw during this that a lot of people were purchasing because they wanted to make a purchase that had an additional impact. So we saw a lot of stats that were, brands that have some sort of give back or affiliation with a nonprofit, or there's something that they're doing either in, their supply chain or a nonprofit partnership. Consumers are more likely to want to engage with that brand and kind of triple or double the impact of the purchase that they're making beyond just something that benefits themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the bigger questions right now is interacting with brands is great. Making those personal connections is great. But how are we going to recreate that in-store feel-good holiday experience during Q4? People aren't able to go into those stores to listen to, their favorite Christmas songs or holiday songs, get that shopping experience. From an ad standpoint, we can use micro experiences, right? We have mobile units in social and Instagram, Facebook, and other areas where essentially a microsite, a lookbook, if you will, where you can have that brand experience and have that shopping experience. How do you approach that from creative? And, what are some of the things you're talking about, either from like a UX standpoint or an actual creative?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is going to be, there's no template for this holiday. It's going to be unlike any holiday we've ever seen, it, especially in recent history, where I think so much of our experience of, holiday and Christmas is shaped for better or worse through our shopping experiences. I think, it's like every kid in America has a picture of themselves with a mall Santa. And there's not going to be a lot of work for mall Santas this year.
Right.
So I think that there's going to be a lot of families, a lot of people trying to kind of fill in the gaps of what they typically experience in holiday, whether it's interactions with families and friends, holiday work parties, the shopping experience, and kind of feeling that through the experiences that we're having online and through social media. And I'm really interested to see, how brands can kind of exploit that a little bit more, not necessarily exploit, but definitely, speak to that. And I think it'll be interesting to see, if Zoom backgrounds become this year's ugly sweater, or, doing TikTok dances to, favorite Christmas movies become the meme that starts to spread. But I think there's going to be an awful lot of that. And definitely we've seen, a lot of kind of online memes being something that goes back and forth between content creators and brands to kind of deepen their exposure and also explain their personality to consumers. So I think that, one of the things that I think brands are going to need to do is both plan long term and plan for holiday campaigns, but also stay agile and stay, able to kind of have these continuing conversations that really are of the moment, because, with the way that everything has changed so quickly over the past year, and how much our online conversations now mean to us in terms of engaging with the outside world.
Right.
Brands being present in that matters a lot. And I think we saw some interesting stuff, beauty brands doing things during COVID where they were making stickers and filters and things that were kind of extensions of kind of who they are as brands. And I think that there's a lot of room for that into the holiday experience, and whether that's, inviting, parents to make, list for Santa, on their website, or engaging across the social media experience. I think that successful brands will think about the experiential side of things as well as the kind of direct commerce side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you bring up a good point about brands being present. Usually when you go to a store, you might even work with a sales associate. So I think brands should be thinking today about how can I kind of bring that white glove sales associate experience to my website, talking about getting live chat on your website, or even implementing strategies within a messenger campaign or something like that. Email nurturing, really keeping that open line of communication and being available for questions, especially around gifting, will be more important today than ever. And not to mention reviews. I think if a brand's not having product reviews on their site that are authentic and real, we're not talking about pushing reviews that aren't rooted in real customer experiences. Everyone should be doing that. And that's really part of how you think about your UX experience, and even really SEO for some instances as well, because it's very important to have that type of content on site to help influence the customer that this is the right product for me.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because when we talk about not being able to have that in-store shopping experience, you miss out on so many aspects of product purchasing and selection where you're, in-store, you're able to experience, the tactile side of a product, or, sensorial elements of it. And we lose a lot of that when we go online. So I think that, when we think about helping consumers choose really great gifts online, the difference between two things, if they, just have flat photos, is a price point. But if you enhance that with things like social proof, or really video, or, this is where influencer content can be so helpful, where you have somebody touching and interacting and saying what they like about something, that can just amplify that experience so much. And it also helps drive purchasing through your website as opposed to, another channel. A lot of that happens social and can happen directly on Instagram right now. You can experience all of that without even leaving that.
Yep. We just got one of our clients opted in as some sort of accelerator program to the IG checkout and store experience, which will be very cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that IG store product tagging and catalogs and Google Merchant Center, there's a lot of things to get going and get in order. The good news is that there's still time. So a question for you, since this is a little outside of my wheelhouse, when it comes to influencer work, how much, for the people that are listening in, how much lead time would it take to get something like that going for an influencer program that would end up netting some good reach, good follows, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, influencers it takes time. There's selecting, shipping product, getting content back, and you really want to manage all of that really well. One of the things that we always drill into our clients is, if we are working with influencers, be really clear about what you want from those contracts. Like, make sure that if part of what you need to explain your product better is video, make sure that part of your contract with that influencer is that you do get that video content back, and it's not just a stories post that kind of goes by and you don't capture that. So setting everything up really well. I mean, you definitely want to at least put in like a good month and a half of prep time before you're going to actually start getting things back, and then to be able to integrate that into a campaign and a posting schedule. It's months, not weeks. So, unless once your team gets more seasoned and you're able to really run it like clockwork, that's one thing. Right. If you're doing something for the first time, plan for it to take longer than you expect, for sure.
Right. So I think for everyone listening in, the obvious answer is you need to start right now. Don't wait. Keep going for your planning sessions and get them going today. Because it's going to set you up for a more successful Q4. It's going to be unknown. There's a lot of uncertainty. We can expect a few things. We can expect more browsing behavior. We can expect more visits to your website. But we're also going to expect a pretty heavily influenced by promotion style customer that's also at the same time being influenced by brand value. So connecting that puzzle will be crucial. In terms of influencer campaigns, I couldn't agree more. Getting that stuff set up ahead of time. And even from a media strategy standpoint, getting your audiences in order and starting to seed those audiences. We held a webinar a few sessions back. I'm not even going to pretend to know when it was, but it was about the leaky buckets concept and keeping your website, so to speak, your bucket full of users so that you can replenishly go back and pull them out for conversions and timelines like that. So you'll be able to track that behavior on site with their add to cart actions, their browsing behavior, and connect that to the UX so you can make those adjustments for holiday, right? So having enough time to get that stuff in order will be really, really crucial. I want to bring it back to the audience right now for a second and cover off on one of our other polls. When we think about making these introductions to users and customers, authenticity, reviews, I'm wondering if the audience here can, if they haven't already filled it out, go into your poll and answer this question, which is, what percentage of customers are likely to try a new product during the holiday season? Some people might think, oh, you know what? We've got the Amazon that's got everything there. We've got people that love their staple products that they're just going to buy time and time again. But what percentage of customers are likely to try a new product? Got a few people popping some answers in. Very close. It's almost neck and neck right now. Across 28%, 42% here. So the answers we got here are 27%, 55%, and 79%. It's basically break even right now. We'll give it another couple seconds. These blue lines are dancing around. Katie, can you see the poll right now?
I can see the poll. Yeah. Got the only thing it doesn't tell us is how many people have voted. So
I know, it's true.
The bars moving.
It's true. It's like when we tell, we quote metrics, but there's no scale as to like what the volume of clicks was.
Right.
It's going to be misleading sometimes.
It looks pretty neck and neck. It's pretty evenly split.
So it looks like we've got 33% across the board between 27, 55, and 79. The correct answer based off a recent study is that 79% of customers are willing to explore a new product and buy a new product, whether that be for themselves or for gifting. And what that tells you is you have a chance to make that interaction with someone. You have a chance to make that first brand introduction. And possibly, if you have your house in order and you have your strategies in order, foster loyalty and repeat purchase rate. Thinking about LTV. We're not thinking about that one-time purchase just during Q4. We're thinking about nurturing new customers this year, back half of the most interesting year of my life, 2020, for a stronger 2021, which will be even more fun, hopefully, but in a different way. So let's get to like the wrap up of this. We've been chatting for a little bit and talk about planning. So we've talked about a lot of concepts and theories. The big takeaway here is Q4 is coming. We're not sure what's really going to happen, but we know, again, higher traffic volume, make your creative authentic, think about social responsibility, how you're giving back to brands, thinking about that brand experience during the holiday season that can connect them to what they are used to feeling good about. But Katie, what's your planning process? How do you get ready for holiday?
I mean, I think one big thing is, like you were saying, making sure the house is in order. But one thing that from a branding perspective, I think people focus so much on promotions around holiday. And when we talk about almost 80% of people are willing to try a new product, they're willing to try that new product because they're getting excited about the story. They're getting excited about what's behind it. When you think about like a gift giving experience, I think it's kind of like a two-touch experience, right? There's the experience of the person who's choosing the gift, who the gift that they choose is an expression of how well they know the person they're giving it to, their own values in terms of, does this align with kind of what I want to be putting my money towards, and then turning around and sharing it with someone else. And then there's the story that you get to tell the person that you give the gift to. So when you think of creating a really great experience around holiday, I think make sure that the brand story is still there. When you go to websites around holiday and you just have the hero section and it's just a, generic holiday message, and everything else is filled in with promotions around free shipping and 20% off and, 5 days left to get, shipped before Christmas, don't forget to make sure that your brand story is woven in there and you're telling something that's compelling to someone who's going to be turning around and giving your gift to someone else, because those don't fall away. They become more important when somebody's coming to your brand for the first time.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that's how I get influenced on giving gifts to people. If I make a connection to the brand, I think it makes a relevant connection to my, important person's life. I'm going to tell them the brand story when I give it to them. It's not just, I got this for 30% off or something. It's, this is this cool brand. It's made in the USA. It's whatever it might be, because I think it's cool and I thought it was cool for you. So I totally agree with that. That's a great call out. From our side, to be very data driven, I'm all about goals. Please, 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 please give us your goals. Give us your goals for Q4. How can we help you achieve your goals? I think this Q4, everyone always talks about how do I win the holiday season? I think for 2020, think about how you can win holiday for you. Set your expectations, set your goals, look at your inventory, your margins. What's going to make you whole by the end of the year? What's going to make you set yourself up for a better next year and a strong Q1. So please do share goals with your marketing partners. Anyone from our client list that we invited to this webinar, if you're hearing me talk about goals and you haven't given it to us yet, please do. I'm going to ask you about it again when I talk to you next. The other part that we're talking about here, I think should consider some ability to be flexible. So how do you approach like agility and nimbleness? Because I think from our perspective, it's okay, backup audiences, secondary strategies, and this is how we optimize our media mix, with a hyper focus on data. But what about from a creative standpoint? How do you approach a nimble approach to creative?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes towards kind of like how you're planning campaigns and content across the holiday season, really across any time period, right? You've got the stuff that is coming up. There are hard dates that are set in stone, and you want to make sure you have content to post for that. But you really, especially this year, like we have no idea what this fall looks like on so many levels, like politically, with COVID, with other social things that are going on right now. There are so many conversations for brands to engage in and should engage in because consumers really, really care about it. And you don't know, you can't plan for now the conversation that is going to be bubbling to the surface on Black Friday. We just don't know. We might of still counting votes for the election for all we know, hopefully not, but it's going to be different. So there's the kind of hard things that you want to plan in, like what is the campaign kind of look and feel, but there's also going to be those places where you want to allow your team to be able to quickly inject new content. So whether it's social posts that it's like on this day we're going to post a timely post and we're not going to decide what it is until a week out, a day out, or email campaigns where you have enough kind of variability built into the creative that you can change the messaging quickly. I think a lot of that comes into it. And, I do think that one thing that, I think a lot of brands learned this year is that when you plan too far ahead with campaigns, you do stand the chance of having to throw things out. So making sure you have a team on standby, working with the team to really talk about like how quickly does it take for us to turn this around or kind of tear it down and build it back if we have to. For sure that you know what that's going to take, and don't have your graphics team do everything for Black Friday and then be completely unavailable should something happen that you need to respond to.
Right. I think that kind of connects back to that ability to use some UGC or even influencer content, right? Like definitely put in some time on making some of your own graphics and doing your own creative work, but a good backup plan might be just having some of those user-generated images ready to go if you need to, along with the testimonials we talked about.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we've been chatting for a little bit more than 20 minutes, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time that's joined us. We are going to be sharing out a checklist, a holiday checklist, things to consider, talking points for either for your internal discussions at your brand or with your partners, whoever they may be. But before we wrap it up, we do just want to address a couple of questions from the Q&A. So before we wrap this up, let's take a look at what we've got here. Got a question from Hannah. My company is not focused on social responsibility before, but sounds like that's very important this year. How can I add values to my creative and messaging? Katie?
I can take this one. I think you can't just add value to your creative and your messaging. You have to add it into the structure of your company too.
Yes.
So it's nice if you have an opinion on Black Lives Matter, but I think we've all seen what happens when a company just puts out a black square and says we support and doesn't actually look internally to see what they're doing to support representation in their corporate structure. So first of all, be willing to put your money where your mouth is. But the exercise that we always take our clients through when we're working with a new brand is really to dig into what makes you purpose-driven. So if there are values, can you guys hear my dog snoring? That just got really loud.
No.
We dig into kind of what's true for you as a brand and your DNA. What do you believe? What do you promise to the consumer? How does that influence the products that you make? Where do you want to be as a brand? And then we talk about things like what's the cultural moment that we're in right now? And how does that relate back to who you are as a brand? Then it becomes really obvious what stories you can kind of tease forward and bring into the creative, because you can't say something unless it's true and you're willing to double down on it. You've seen a lot of brands kind of saying like, we realize we have things to work on. We're going to, institute a level of transparency as we work through these things. So kind of holding themselves to that transparency. And I think that becomes really important. If there's something that you could be doing better on, or a cause that you care about as a brand, partner with them, but do it meaningfully. Don't just give $1 for every purchase. Really look at how you as a company can be an ally to that cause and do it in a way that's not just for a holiday promotion. Perhaps it's a partnership that you can institute going forward or make a part of your kind of structure. But I would say be very, very careful of just doing something in your creative and messaging, because it can't just exist there. It has to be something that's true for you, or something that you're willing to really make a part of who you are as a company.
I could not have said that better myself, so I'm not even going to touch that one. That was great. Let's see. We got some other questions trickling in here. When it comes to messaging, how do you go about creating a unique holiday campaign when consumers are going to be flooded with both holiday and COVID messaging? So I'm going to let you get into some of the messaging, Katie, but at least from how do we get to holiday? If we're thinking about creating copy and messaging for audiences during the holiday, we're already too late. Yep. So the best way for us to ensure that the right message gets to the right person is to have already primed that person in advance of that time period. Building up email lists, building up customer lists, so we can re-engage with more valuable messaging and already have that pre-existing brand experience and product experience. Because your question here, I think, is rooted in how do I stand out? And you're right. It's going to be a very cluttered market. It's going to be hard to stand out. So better to try to say hello and shake that hand. Or I guess not really during COVID time, maybe an elbow bump.
That's going to go away.
in advance of Q4, so that you can make those more enriching experiences for them during that time. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add on messaging related to that or not, Katie.
Yeah, I mean, from a messaging perspective, I think it's exactly the right question. Is like, how do you break through the noise? And definitely thinking about how you can develop a campaign. I mean, I think the problem that a lot of brands just kind of go to red and green during the holiday, or start putting tinsel on things, or there's so many holiday tropes. It's important to know who you are as a brand and to kind of think about like, what are we trying to inspire during the holidays? What's the story that we're trying to tell? And make sure it's authentic to your brand. If it's something that's unique and ownable to you, you're not going to have trouble breaking through the noise. If you find that the things that you have to say about your brand don't feel entirely unique, that might be problematic. And that's, you might need to dig a little deeper into kind of like who you are as a brand and what you have that's really completely ownable.
Yep, that is absolutely true. I think there's a chat for you, Katie, that you might want to just get back to. But someone's looking to connect with you after this, which I think is great.
Got it.
So there's a question here about goal setting. Someone that's new to e-com, how do I set goals? How do I set a benchmark for myself? That's a very difficult question. If you don't have a lot of data or experience in e-com, how do you set a goal? One way we could go about it, if we were working through this exercise together, would be to say, look at your revenue from previous Q4 for your foot traffic store. And then in your recent data sets, because I'm hoping you're already active on media, check out what you're getting for cost per session and see how you can replicate that foot traffic digitally with a session and go from there and quantify from there. You should have some sort of conversion rates. You should be ready to go to market with a promotion or some of that enriching brand value type of messaging. But you can back into all this stuff with the lovely math, my favorite. So goal setting starts with finding something to go off of. One advice for someone that has not really dug deep into e-com yet would be to try to quantify foot traffic into a session-based number and then work backwards or forwards from there. We've got a question here.
What about this leaky bucket theory question? Is it too late to start building my audience now for the holidays?
Absolutely not. We saw last year we saw the 30 and 60 day windows perform best in our remarketing schedules during holiday. So if you think backwards, that's about the beginning of October. There was still value in creating enriching experiences in September, pushing further past into that 90 window and even past that, because those remarketing CPMs and clicks and conversions are more cost effective. So it's never too late. I would say if you're getting into like the back half of October, you're really threading it very close. But starting in September is plenty of time because we really value here, at least from a marketing perspective, that 30, 60, 90 timeframe.
Mm-hmm. I see a question from Steph about what quick fixes. We actually had talked about this. We didn't get into it in our little chat, but I mean, every site is probably making different mistakes. So, I think one of the things that can be really helpful is to hire a UX designer to do an audit on your site. One of the things that I find to be a really great tool if you're on Shopify or a couple other platforms, there's a tool called Hotjar, which
I was just going to talk about Hotjar. I was literally just about to say that.
It'll give you it records people as they move through your site. So you can see kind of where people are dropping off. One of the things that I do when I look at, any new client is kind of like when I land on their site and as I move through it, how many of these buttons are getting me to purchase and how compelling are they? I also kind of look at it like, what questions do I have about these products and how are they being answered? Is it through visuals? Is it through imagery? Is it neither? Some of the other things that you might want to consider, especially when we think about kind of like your site versus Amazon, is are you answering questions about how quickly people would get product, or are we understanding how much shipping costs, or there's a lot of little questions that we now expect to be answered at a glance. And if your site doesn't give those answers to people, that can be something that might be turning them off. But you want to see whether they're dropping off the home page. You want to see if they're dropping off a product page. And you also want to think about where you're directing traffic. If the low conversion rates are coming from an ad and then they're dropping off on a campaign landing page, that campaign landing page might not have, content that's very compelling. So
yep. Could be an audience challenge as well. You might be driving the wrong person to the site. One thing to look at as far as a quick win would be I would absolutely check out site speed. especially not even from desktop, but from mobile. What is my site speed score? There's a tool, if you Google developers mobile site speed scoring, just literally type that in, Steph, you'll be able to score your website on a mobile device. So please do check that out. I think we can wrap this up. This was a great conversation, Katie. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me today about the upcoming holiday season. For everyone that joined us today, thank you so much for spending the nearly 45 minutes listening to us babble on. But I also want to thank you for being engaged in the polls as well as the Q&A. The big takeaway from here, it's never too late to start planning, but you definitely need to start planning now. We're going to send out a checklist, and I encourage you to discuss internally as well as with your marketing partners about how you can make Q4 win for you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks again, Katie.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.